So in this video, we're just going to talk you through some of the points that we sort of want to share with you about how our Saturday event runs for our species hunting competition here in Falmouth. So it starts off, if you fished it before, you'll be familiar with the fact that we separate the town here into 4 different sectors, or zones we call them. So we have A, B, C and D effectively. As anglers, when you get here in the morning, we'll all be meeting at the Chain Locker pub where we will separate you out into 3 different groups. So typically, let's say we have 30 entrants, we separate you into 3 groups of 10 obviously. During the course of the day, we have a rotation system, so you get a chance to fish each and every one of the zones. This is a little bit different actually, of which obviously I'll explain more in a second, but as we go through the day, you're fishing typically an hour to an hour and a half in each of the zones before we then rotate you. In each of the zones, you'll find a steward. So one of our guys typically will be there with what is actually probably a half length of drain pipe, a metre long piece of drain pipe, where it's open top with a tape measure down the middle. So when you catch a fish, which hopefully you'll catch many, it'll just be a case of you just popping to your closest steward to have him actually measure the fish effectively on the tape. That is then recorded on a piece of paper that you'll have been given in advance, so that you keep personal track of all the fish you've caught. They'll individually be signed off by both the steward and yourself, so that we know exactly where you're at, along with obviously mentioning the species name, because all of these things become relevant with the point system that we run for this event. So it's actually something where there's lots to it, but it's relatively easy for us at the end of it all, with the likes of the spreadsheets and things that we've set up, to actually collate who's got however many points at the end of the competition. And that's the point of how we run this weekend. You have points for both the general species hunting side of things outside of this Falmouth set number of hours during the Saturday, where you can go and just catch as many species as you can. And then we have points for lots of different things that are allocated for this Saturday part. So I won't make it sound too complex, because it's actually not when you look at it on paper. But we have points. You might, for example, get 1 point for every millimetre of fish that you catch. So at the end of the day, hopefully you'll have meters and meters of fish. So that'll add up to however many thousand points ideally. There are then additional points, bonuses we'd call them I suppose, that are awarded for each individual species that you catch here in Falmouth. There's also then points for catching the longest of a certain species. Points awarded for catching the biggest of a certain species, the longest fish of the day, for example. There's all sorts of additional points. So even if you're not somebody who's necessarily going to catch the most fish, you can easily make that up by catching either bigger or more unique fish. So tactics can come into play as we fish across these different zones. And I would generally advise just fishing to your strengths, to be honest, because you'll find there's a mixture here of what are things like blennies and stuff like that down the sides of the walls. There's even the odd bream and things like that around. There's always going to be the odd bass swimming around, which could be mega points with regards to how we run this system. You may be the only one to catch one, for example. It could get points for the biggest fish on the day, the most unique, all these different things, as well as the length. So there's tactics involved in this competition, which is what makes the event itself so unique in a lot of ways. The way that we've split the zones, we have Zone A, which is where I am here. I'm actually down behind what is the Tesco's effectively, and we have the National Maritime Museum just across here to my left, where this zone out here on the end, which is where most of the fishing happens in this Zone A, it runs all the way up the side of the building here, as well as a little bit back around behind the camera there as well, where this is the way that you fish the zones will actually be allocated at the start. So you'll be split into your groups, and then the groups, let's say there's group A, B and C, will be each allocated a starting point. So some of you will start here on A, some on B and some on C. We'll talk about D later. So we start at this end of the town with Zone A. As we move through, which you'll see in a second, then we'll go across and through the town to where eventually we'll end up with our big grand finale effectively down on the pier, where we'll all communicate, we'll all be there at the end for a big social ending to this day, which will be later in the evening into dark even. So this year I think we have low tide at what is 10 o'clock in the morning. So we've made the mistake probably in previous years of actually starting a bit too early, because we've ended up starting with actually too little water depending on the size of the tide. So this year we're not actually starting fishing until always 12 o'clock, so a couple of hours into the tide, which then actually extends us nicely through the course of the day, fishing with, I think, ideally what would just be a comfortable and nice amount of water on every stretch of the town. You will find probably that if you know the town very well, there's different stretches that might fish better at certain states of tide, but that's why we rotate, and it's to give everybody almost a fairer chance in a way, whether you know the town or not, because you'll always be there with a group of guys, some of whom will know the area, some won't, and it ensures that you're kind of, even if you're somebody who hasn't been involved in these sorts of events before, you're not just going to be out on your lonesome and just told to go and fish. You're going to be surrounded by at least probably 9 other guys who are actually fishing the same water, sharing ideas. And that's one of the great things about our social hunt, our species hunting event, and just LRF in general across the UK, is that it's such a social type of fishing. And especially on this zone, you might find that although the zone extends both ways, most of the guys will be round about this end section here. So if you had any advice about fishing this section, I think probably one of the starting points will be to try and find a space around the very end here, because we probably do see slightly more fish caught on the end. But you'll find fish right down the walls. This even cuts right back underneath. We've seen a few smaller fish swimming around here this morning. But it's one of those places where this can be the tightest of sections in terms of where we fish. There's small wrasse species down here. There's naturally things like the blennies and stuff like that. The blennies are probably the one species you'll find a lot throughout the zones. We don't weirdly see a lot of gobies caught in Falmouth, the odd one, and it can be a strange thing in that genuinely you can get big points for a goby. So it's one of those towns where we're unlikely to see lots of fish further out in the open water, but if you're willing to take the risk and try for one of these bigger species, whether it's pollock, mackerel, bass, garfish even, you could be in for a lot of points. So there's a lot of tactics involved. So let's get down and have a little look at Zone B. So this is Zone B. So this is where we'll actually start the day across my shoulder here at the Chain Locker pub. That's where we'll do the draw and things like that. And then you'll either be off to either A, B, C to start you off. So B section here is one of the more open, nice, really nice stretch actually. We've got all sorts going on around this sort of point of this end of the harbour side here, at the mouth of the harbour itself. So we have sort of water gushing out of here or in, depending on what the tide's doing. We've got everything from sort of smelt swimming around. We've got wrasse, we've had bream caught off of here, blennies, gobies. They tend to be almost anywhere. So this actually tends to be quite a spread section. We'll get guys kind of all over the place here. Luckily, with the way that it's shaped on the end of this arm here, we've got a central spot where you'll typically find perhaps your steward who you run to with your fish. And it's one of the prime sections, I think, where you might see a slightly larger fish caught, whether that is a bass, or we've actually had mullet caught here in the past as well, just for sort of mega points as far as the competition goes. It's one of those where, again, anything can happen, so it's kind of hard to explain. But just to kind of give you a bit more information in terms of how the timings are going to work this year with regards to how we chop and change between these sections. With your group, you'll obviously rotate. So we're going to do the same as we always have before in that we do these rotations. But previously, we've done those rotations every 90 minutes with a 15-minute break in the middle to allow you to kind of get to the next zone with your group. This year, we're doing that still, and the timing is roughly the same still with regards to the 15 minutes, but the zones I'm actually going to cut down to an hour's fishing of each. The reason for that is so that I can fit in another one, because what I really want to do is before we go off at the very end to fish Zone D out on the pier, we're going to have what is effectively a free-for-all. So you'll have an hour's zone, which will be kind of your fourth zone of the day, where you'll have fished A, B and C, no matter which group you're in. And then we actually have a random hour where the stewards will still be placed on A, B and C, but you can fish any of those zones anywhere you like within the zone areas. So it's still very much tied to the zones because we need the stewards to be central to those zones and not floating around literally everywhere. But you can choose which section you want to go and fish in. So I think it'll be a really nice part of the day where you've been confined to fishing with your group in a certain zone throughout the rest of the day, you'll get an hour to just go pretty much wherever you like. So it should hopefully work really well. Let's get down and have a little look at the next zone, Zone C. So this is Zone C. It's actually quite a long section in reality. It's what we call, I guess, the car park section in a way. It stretches all the way from one of the main car parks in town here, all the way down to this end where we've got this lovely sort of pier as a bit of a feature, steps going down, all sorts of little different sort of little nooks and crannies for fish to get into. We see a lot of wrasse caught here as well as some of the other species, lots of blennies, lots of wrasse mostly. One of the places along this length of town where you might find you actually do get a chance to catch a bigger fish or two, especially some of the wrasse we've seen in the past, some of the ballons that live here as well as the others. So like I said, there's a big long section of wall that we've got across to my left here, and a little bit of a no man's land in some respects, but you can always catch your sort of blenny and things like that along the walls. The steps at the end, again, just anything can happen, but it's really on this end here, at this end of the zone, where we see a lot of the fish caught, and it's where a lot of the guys will generally just because I think we all like being sociable for this event, where we'll all kind of gather around almost this end part of the section here, just seeing what each other are doing and learning a few things as we go. So it's a great reference always with this type of competition, having so many guys in such close proximity, we can all kind of learn about what the others are doing. It's like having 30 baits, well 10 baits in the case of the way the zones work with the way that it is, in the water at once, gives us a good idea as to what's down there and what's around. And that's kind of part of the interesting thing about the competition as a whole, is we really get a good idea of what's actually in and around the waters of Falmouth in a way. So it's a section where I think always with this type of fishing, I think if you were to come prepared with a certain type of rod, for example, for this sort of competition, I like the sort of 7 foot plus rods for this sort of fishing. being able to pull those fish, especially some of the larger ones, away from the wall, having the extra length in rod to kind of bring them out is always a good thing. So you might find that we have guys coming with very short rods, longer rods as well, even bass rods on occasion, because you never know what it might be worth fishing for or what you might see. But the point is, this section, I love it because of the fact that it is so sociable. So anything going to happen here, hopefully there'll be a bigger fish or two. So this is zone D, the last zone of the day. This is where we'll all end up, nice and sociable at the end of the day, which is the point of why we've introduced this D section as the kind of the grand finale in a way. It's not a section we fish throughout the rest of the day. I'm out here today with lots and lots of people on the Prince of Wales Pier, where this section fishes a bit differently from the others. Here, darkness is drawing in, everything starts to change a little bit with the fishing that we've experienced throughout the day. So it can kind of favour some of the guys who perhaps are more used to fishing with things like just general soft plastics and jig heads, things like that. We'll start to see, as the darkness comes in, a lot of scad and things like that caught here. So it's a section that can kind of make or break your day in terms of results, because if you can kind of adapt to the conditions and the darkness coming in, it'll really favour more technical fishing in some respects, because it's, like I said, different species. We might catch bass here after dark. We've seen bream here as well. We'll catch the scad hopefully. We might well see a lot of squid caught as well as they kind of start to move in. Not that they're part of the competition, but they could be a problem for anybody casting outwards into the open water. So again, tactics will come into this little section here. It's a really interesting zone as a whole, because although we're out and we've got the whole length of the pier to fish, we've got various little levels of steps that go down as we come out. So there's all sorts of little nooks and crevices that you may find yourself on. Again, everybody's going to be here, so there could be 30 guys out here all at the same time, which is brilliant from competition point of view, great from a learning point of view if you've not fished a competition like this before as well. But it's just such a nice way to end the day. Very often we'll sort of finish here this year, what is going to be 8:30, where everybody's almost just ready to go again, because actually typically we've all had such a good day, and it's such a nice, like I said before, it's such a nice change from a normal event. So from this point forward, I mean, this is where, after this event is finished, you can then go as a species hunter effectively. You can go out and just carry on your mission of the weekend, whether you're heading south, north, east, west, wherever you want to go. And it's just a case of now trying to add to the species you've already caught, whether that was prior to this event or during. It's worth noting actually that if you catch any species during the Falmouth event, that does go towards your weekend tally. So you don't need to try and catch it again later on or worry about, I mean, during the Falmouth event, even if you caught, even if you caught, let's say, a pollock prior to the Falmouth event, catching one during the Falmouth event will still give you the points that you need for the Falmouth part of the competition. So again, this will all be put down on paper if you want to look at it that way as well. But there's basically, during the course of this Saturday, catch as many fish as you can of any type, because the more fish, the more species, the more points you're going to have, and hopefully the higher you're going to kind of come up in this field. There are prizes individually for the Falmouth Day as well. So fingers crossed you can be with us, and fingers crossed you'll do very well. So there we have it, a little bit of a breakdown of our Saturday Falmouth event. It's a highlight, to be honest, of my weekend, because it's so sociable. It's the time when I can get to see everybody. So come and join us, check out all the details online, social media feed, tickets are on our website. So hopefully we'll see you soon.